And we're live now. Welcome everyone to another episode of Biz Bytes Live. I'm your host, Anthony McMahon from the IT Psychiatrist. And today my guest is Adam Berry, the CEO of Interactive Platforms. Now, Adam's been working on a couple of great businesses lately. One is Remotely, which I want to talk to him a lot about today. And the other is Kudos Web, who are bringing some exciting AI capabilities that we'll get to towards the end. But first off, I want to start with Remotely. So welcome, Adam.
Hey, thanks, Anthony. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. So Remotely, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with Remotely and some of the things that some of the problems you're trying to solve in the market with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started working on Remotely about 9 months ago. Remotely is a remote working platform. So it's designed to support people who are working remote. And what we've developed, or where the concept came from, actually, is out of playing games. So I love playing multiplayer games, and I had previously owned Animation College and Ames IT. So I had a background in animation and technology. After I sold those colleges, I was just gaming really hard out. I didn't really have a plan B, Anthony. So, and I developed these great relationships with people all over the world, in the States and New Zealand, and I'm talking about every possible age, race, and you can possibly imagine. So, I just got to know people really well, and then just one day it came to me. It's like, this is amazing. I've got these great connections. I have these huge relationships. I know how people show up in situations, like when things are really tense in the game. Some people run in, some people run away. You actually really get to know people. So I just had this thought: why can't I work this way? And then I thought, hey, why can't I work this way? So we put together an amazing team of animators, Unity specialists, people with AI expertise, and we've created Remotely. So Remotely is a platform. We've actually created it in a 3D avatar. So you actually come onto a planet, you arrive as an avatar. The really amazing thing that we've solved is presence. So the ability to come into an environment and just walk up to somebody and say, hey, good morning, how's it going? What are you working on? No calls, no scheduled meetings, just the ability to walk up and talk to people. And I have team members in the Philippines and in Australia, and they log in and they just walk up and they can talk to anyone on the team. So presence is really, really important. The other thing that we've done is, because we're using avatars, we've built in their state. So you can look at an avatar, and if they are kneeling over and hammering something, they are not to be disturbed. If they're making kind of I'm talking on the phone kind of movements, they're talking on the phone. So as human beings, we get these visual cues and we understand them. We're so used to working in an office, we're conditioned to seeing that. You see two people like in close talking away, they're having a pretty deep conversation, probably best not to disturb them. So we've built a lot of that functionality into Remotely, and off the back of that, we've integrated a lot of tools like Slack and Zoom. So we've aggregated your Slack channel into Remotely, so you're not constantly getting interrupted. You're able to review those channels when and how you want. And from there, we're going to start to collect data, and that data will enable us to provide productivity insights. So productivity insights to the individuals, and like heat maps to companies. So throughout the day, these are the settings. This is who's talking to who. We can provide those kind of heat maps, and that's designed around productivity insight. So it's not to we have no interest in micromanaging people. It's all about creating a work environment which is as good as or better than having to commute to an office. So pretty exciting.
Very exciting, and there's a couple of things in there that I really like the sound of. The one is presence, and the other is the aggregation of channels. having worked in a corporate background before, where we've had multi-channels for communication, and now running in my own business and working with the variety of other businesses, including Kudos, you can get trapped in so many different channels where communications are happening and therefore miss something. So having it aggregated in one place is great. But the presence element, how does that incorporate? So how does that pick up from the real world? If you and I are having a conversation, our avatars are engaging, how's that reflected, or how's that captured by remotely to be able to reflect that?
So we worked with a social and behavioral clinical psychologist, and we basically mapped out, the human interactions of an office environment. So, people talk about that water cooler moment. People talk about coming in and being able to, look around the office and see people working on the phone, having conversations. So if you're in the office and you see somebody on the phone, you generally will wait for them to get off the phone before you interrupt them, right? But
Yep.
when you work remote, no one understands that context. So basically, everyone's just interrupting everyone throughout the day. And, everyone's having to put aside probably some deep thinking, maybe some critical thinking that they were working on, and deal with somebody else's issue. So we've taken what is actually happening in an office environment, we've added those visual cues, and we've allowed people to assess, okay, that person is in their working state. I can just walk up. My avatar can just walk up to their avatar. Their avatars will acknowledge each other, and I can say, "Hey, are you free for a chat?" And they'll say, "Yeah, I'm free." But then, if a third, fourth, and fifth, or sixth person wants to join us, they can. So, if we want to have a private conversation, we've actually got a like a cone of silence that we've built. So, with a flick of a switch, you have a cone of silence. Nobody can hear your conversation. But the ability just to, there's no scheduling, there's no need to, try and coordinate 10 people to have a conversation. You just basically, you're literally there. That's the amazing thing.
It's that impromptuness that being there in person is easy to do, but is difficult to replicate using a Slack or a Teams or any of the other channels, isn't it?
That's right, because you're only seeing that information in a 2D stream. It's just coming at you as a stream. So it basically says, hey, this is one conversation going on here. This is another conversation going on there. But you might be on a call. You might be right in the middle of something, and those business tools, those productivity tools, in that 2D form, are basically interrupting, you throughout the day. And So we've created this environment that allows people to set their status. When they're available, they're available, and when they're working, and when they don't want to be disturbed, they don't want to be disturbed, and everyone can understand that. Now, you've got to remember that we're geographically spread throughout New Zealand and throughout Asia in our case. And it's just amazing, like the ability for me to go and talk to one of my teammates in the Philippines. I just walk up and talk to them. Before, that's a scheduled phone call. Maybe they call me back, maybe they don't. Maybe I've got to move into another meeting. So I've actually learned more about the team that work for me on remotely, and the team that work with me in remotely than I had when we were based in an office, and we were making phone calls to them in the Philippines for Australia. So that's quite exciting. My other company, Kudos, has actually been working in remotely since December. And in all honesty, a couple of the developers were like, look, I've worked remote before. I felt lonely. I really, I'm really worried about working from home. And we said, well, actually, that's what remotely is trying to solve for. And we're now, 5 months in, and I can absolutely tell you that no one on my team, no one on the Kudos web team, wants to go back to an office. And no one's feeling lonely. We start every day with a virtual stand-up, so all our avatars just come together 8:45, just like a normal meeting. But there's no commute. We've all been for our walk around the block, or taken the dog out around the block, and we do a stand-up, and then we're able to break off set our status and start working. Yeah.
Nice. And it's such a great time for remote working, for the conversation around remote working as well. Just by default with COVID-19, and companies that had traditionally focused on co-location, everyone in one space, everyone going down that path, they're now looking towards remote working. And I know a couple of businesses I've been involved with are actually saying, how do they adopt to this as a new norm once they go back, because maybe they don't need to pay that rent. Are you finding that, or the research you've been doing, do you feel that there has been a change in attitude towards remote working over the last 6 weeks?
Well, let me answer that in two parts. First of all, before COVID-19, the remote working category has been growing year on year at quite a large rate of knots regardless. So some countries are quite ahead in remote working practice, like Holland, for example, is ahead of the US, but the US is growing fast. So the adoption of remote work, and I think for reasons of infrastructure and just the time it takes to get to work and things like that, people around the world have been adopting remote working practice for decades, but actually only in the last decade has it really start to grow exponentially. Already before COVID-19, remote working category was a $7 trillion category. So it's huge. There's a lot of tools out there providing productivity and communication support to remote work. But I think now that, if you like, a lot of new company categories have been introduced to the concept of remote work, there's definitely the opportunity where we don't have to create the category in their minds anymore. Like, the category now exists, and what it's about now is educating them, so helping them come up that learning curve a lot faster. Let me give you an example of that. I feel like a lot of companies will adopt the technology if they can make it a successful experience for their team. And to do that, they have to understand what's been happening in remote work practice for decades. There's in the first week of COVID-19 in New Zealand, we saw like thousands of posts. Hey, look, here's me and my team. We're all on a Skype call or a Zoom call, and look, there's six images, and we're all talking to each other. This is amazing, and people think that that's remote work. That's just a video call.
It's a communication.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that, because right at the start of it all, I had an email from a fairly large company in America saying, here's how you work from home. Enable a work from home tool like Zoom. And I'm sitting there going, Zoom doesn't enable working from home. It enables communication across a distributed network, but it's not a work from home app. So I guess what you're talking about remotely is starting to fill that niche that otherwise wasn't there.
Well, we believe so, and that's how we got here after 9 months of work, and it's just, I guess, it's an opportunity for us now to put remotely out into the world and see if people feel the same way. But one of the things we do know from our research, from working with clinical and behavioral psychologists, is that the downside of remote work, or the current downside of remote work, has been isolation, lack of communication, and just the performance of the general tools that are available to us. So if about 56% of remote workers experience one of those issues, they feel isolated, they lose productivity, or the tools aren't working. And in fact, the research shows that about 1/5 of the workforce is losing about a day a week in lost productivity because of isolation, because of communication, or because of those tools are ineffective. So we were already working towards solving that problem. These are discussions that companies who have just rushed into remote work haven't caught up on yet, but they will. We're heading to week 3. I think from this week onwards, companies are going to start to really experience new problems where the network of communication starts to break down. people do start to feel isolated. They're missing out on important discussions. Perhaps they've missed a meeting. Perhaps they're not scheduled in. Perhaps they're just talking to their boss and they're not able to, talk a lot to their colleagues or co-workers across multiple teams or divisions. So, if you're in an office situation, you're talking to your team, but you have that conversation with the IT guy in the hallway. Hey, how's that going? Those random kind of connections that help to keep everything cohesive. Those are the things that start to break down now. This is where people start to feel a little bit lonely, and this is where just having a video call is not going to be enough. And those are the things that we've really applied our skills at for remotely.
Outstanding. And there's a couple of things in there, and I want to touch on some of the AI stuff from Kudos Web as well in a moment, but just to incorporate that in there across the wider theme. Two of the podcasts I've done recently on my podcast channel, Biz Bytes, have been on how to lead a remote workforce in a crisis. Now, in both situations, they both the guests there, Gail Page and Aaron Tortelagesi, gave a lot of great insight. And from Aaron's perspective, he's led remote teams through a crisis with the Kaikoura earthquakes causing massive impact to the BNZ technology department at the time. So he was the chief technology officer, had to lead remotely. They had an advantage at that point where, while the building that the organization worked from was out of action, people could still meet together face to face and have coffee meetings. People were working from each other's lounge. They were collaborating in a physical sense. This one's quite different in that physical collaboration doesn't happen. So, like you say, the water cooler chats, the hallway chats, they're just not happening because people aren't thinking to bring them up in a Zoom call. So I think definitely we're going to see that happening. And I applied as well at the start. I applied Tuckman's model, which is the norming, storming, forming, and performing for teams, to the public response to lockdown. And what you're talking about, I think, is the fact that storming isn't a phase that people go through. It's an underlying stage that happens all the way along. And that someone on Friday could have left the office and everything was rosy, and on Monday it's just all gone to rubbish for them, and they're venting in an online forum, which they may have just vented in one-on-one with their manager or something. So we're going to start seeing a lot of that. I think I agree with you there.
Yeah, you're going to start to see, those 6 video screens that you put up. One will be blank. As they can't be bothered turning on their camera anymore.
Yep.
Others will just be like checking their text messages. You'll just start to see the behavioural shift as this complexity shifts and evolves. And like I said, I mean, I'm a massive advocate for remote work. I've experienced it myself now with Kudos Web. My team love it. I personally love it. I love being around my family. I love being able to take the dog for a walk. And I don't miss the commutes, and it's just dead time. It's just so frustrating. Yep. And it's tiring, like what a waste of time. So, and we know, like if we look at cities around the world, we look at London, we look at LA, we look at New York, we look at San Francisco. Our future in New Zealand, if in Auckland at the moment we're averaging 45 minutes to an hour commute each way, then look to London, look to LA, and that's our future. We'll have, I know people who easily commute 2 hours to their office and 2 hours back. Alma, who works for us in the Philippines, was commuting 2 to 3 hours each way just to get to work so she could start supporting us. So we need to disrupt that whole model. That is not sustainable. And the other thing that I really, really, I guess, am very happy about is that I was definitely a huge advocate for remotely to make a contribution in the way that social good, and my company talks about technology for good. So we can see in Auckland already what a couple of weeks of cars off our road has produced for us as a city. I mean, before, if you like, it was almost a theoretical stance that we were taking it remotely. Hey, if we take cars off the road, less CO2 in the environment, less stress on our infrastructure. Um, I feel like that's been validated now. I feel like you just got to look out your window. I've seen hills in Auckland that I don't think I've seen before.
Yep.
The clarity is just beautiful.
There's an example the other day of a village in India, or a city in India, somewhere in India, where they're only 200 kilometers from the Himalayas, and they're seeing the Himalayas for the first time in 30 years because air pollution's dropped. It's incredible. We think we've got it good in Auckland. Imagine these cities that are heavily polluted, not just moderately polluted, and how that could.
And look, this is why I'm advocating for change now, because basically that is our future. It might take 20 years, might take 50 years, but that's the trajectory we're on. We're on for constant smoggy skies, and we're heading on a trajectory of 1 hour becomes 2 hours each way commute. I mean, we should take this opportunity to take the learnings of what's been an incredibly challenging and quite horrific situation for the whole world, and decide that's not going to play out again, because sadly there will be another COVID-19. There will be another crisis that the world has to deal with. So what are the learnings? I mean, some of the countries that have come out of COVID-19 the best are the ones where the governments have actually taken the learnings and applied them. So they're ready for those situations. They have the resources, they have the stockpiles, they have the infrastructure, they're ready to go. So I think what I'm really advocating for now is here's an opportunity. We've validated it, and I'm saying to companies, look, talk to your teams. There are so many positive benefits of working remote for them, for their families, their communities. I've got a couple of young people working for me that are saying, well, I could earn Auckland wages, but actually live in the country. And I'm saying, yeah, you actually could.
Yeah.
So
your skills
time for
become
some paradigm shifts. Yeah.
Your skills become relevant, not your location. It's who you are, not where you are. What you can do, not how quickly you can be in an office. I completely agree with that. I think there's plenty of people out there who could, some of the issues with housing, with supply and demand, with load and motorway load, everything could be solved by just saying, actually, the best developer for us happens to live in Gore or in Nelson, and we're paying them an Auckland wage, or we're paying them a market wage because of their skills rather than because of where they happen to live.
Why not? Let's just take the learnings and let's just start to apply it as a country. It's now's the time. New Zealand, I read briefly this morning, Rod Jury's put a call out there saying, hey, do we want to take this opportunity, to define new business models, new way of applying technology, new ways of doing things? Where can New Zealand take a leadership position? I'm excited that a lot of this has been validated, and I'm excited to see where remotely is going to go.
Oh, definitely, me too. And look, I'm keen to see where it pans out over the next couple of quarters, and as people become more familiar, more comfortable with remote working, and look into how they address, some of the things you talked about in there, the solutions you've built address the challenges people are facing right now. So it's awesome. Just before we wrap up, I do want to touch on some of the stuff that you've been doing with Kudos as well, because I know that you've been looking at complementing the model that Kudos brings, which is web development and web support, but complementing that with the addition of artificial intelligence capabilities, such as a recommendation engine, chat, but also the non-web focused ones like diversity inclusion modeling. Tell us a little bit about what Kudos have got on at the moment with that, particularly that diversity inclusion piece.
Sure. Well, so Kudos is a 21-year-old web development company. It's been around a long time. I actually purchased the company, I'd say just over a year ago now. And I've been working with the team to look at, our business model, looking at how we work with and support clients, looking in terms of where technology is advancing rapidly and where the most value that a web development company like Kudos can add. What we've decided is that the web forms like a central hub, and there are a number of facets that we can add value for clients with. The introduction of AI in terms of the recommendation system is a great way to build loyalty, build customer retention, increase lifetime value of customers, increase conversion rates. So it's a marketing tool. But it's AI driven, and it's designed to help those elements for the marketing team. So that helps drive sales. That helps increase revenue. Pretty much everyone loves having those conversations. And it's also,
just on that,
yeah,
if I could just cut in there, the revenue piece. Amazon's and these stats are a couple of years old, so it's probably increased since then. 35% of Amazon's revenue come from recommendation engine driven purchases. So people like you bought stuff like this. So you can't understate just how much money you can generate or how much revenue you can generate through having good recommendations for your customers.
Absolutely. I mean, we researched a number of business models. Amazon was one of them. We looked at, Netflix and their recommender technology, absolutely brilliant, and how it's transformed their whole business. And we can see that it can add tremendous value for our clients. So, the web component is still a central and critical component. Obviously, the databases that feed off that, but the recommender engine allows individualized and contextualized offers to people, and that helps improve retention and customer experience, and therefore revenue and stickiness of customers. So we're particularly excited about that. We are exploring how we can expand that, working with some pretty amazing AI companies around the world to build on that offering, and actually develop a proprietary solution for companies here in New Zealand and overseas. So that's something that we're rapidly iterating, and actually working with some of the best AI minds around the world. So that's that's pretty exciting for a small web development company that's been around a long time.
Definitely.
The other element that you talked about is where you talked about pay inequity, and so we partnered with a company called Gap Square. They're UK based, and Gap Square are they basically are a data specialist, and they use AI as part of their solution to help companies to understand where their pay gap inequity sits, to be able to track that and to actually confidently report on that. So I've just felt that in terms of that pay gap, that narrative is growing worldwide. It's something that if you look at the UK and other markets now, their laws are changing and being updated to reflect this growing concern. So actually, companies in the UK are legally bound to report on their gender equality scores and their pay gap scores, and be transparent about it. So we were looking at that technology. We felt, as I mentioned very early, that our company is about technology for good, that there was a really great fit there. Kudos works with really large companies, enterprise level companies in New Zealand and Australia. And we felt that some of these companies have 4,500 staff. So we felt that, hey, here's a technology that can that the HR teams can take, save themselves a tremendous amount of time, confidently get the data, confidently report on these gaps in their pay, and then actually just have the tools to proactively start to do something about it. So it may be that there's just inequality in a certain department that is creating the biggest part of your fair pay gap. And so by providing that analysis, we're giving companies readily available tools to say, actually, if we just focus in on the sales team as a starting point, and look how we're going to address fair pay inequity, then that gives us a starting point. It actually, it's not like we have to look across the entire company and figure this out, but actually find the insights, and do it in a really effective and efficient way. And so, yeah, we love GapSquare, and we thought this is a wonderful solution. It's a startup technology out of the UK, an amazing team, super passionate about this sector, and we want to start introducing to our clients and other companies throughout Australia and New Zealand.
Definitely, and there's something in there that you talked about that I don't think can be stressed enough is the time savings. I know a lot of larger companies within their HR departments that I've been talking to, modeling and reporting on diversity and inclusion scores and fair pay equity can take them days, if not a couple of weeks, to get first of all get the data extract and then overlay it and then put everything in it. I know with GapSquare, having seen some of the demos, that shrinks it right down to not necessarily hours always. It just depends on how clean your data is, but it at least makes that analysis and overlay and reporting very, very simple for a client. So I think any company who's struggling, and our government's bringing in regulations around diversity and inclusion as well. Any company who struggles with this would get benefit from GapSquare.
Well, I guess the from my perspective, the first thing to consider is that it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
not just because the government said so, but because it's the right thing to do. It's a great point.
Yeah, it's just the right thing to do. I mean, I have a daughter at university. She's in her third year. She's getting ready to go out into the big wide world. I look at her and I feel, why should she accept or expect a future where she will earn less than her male colleagues because of her gender? It's just stupid, really. So it just needs to be addressed, but the tools need to be provided to do it in a really efficient, effective way. And if you've got that kind of automatic data that's coming through, you've got that gender pay gap reporting, then what I love about this is, the HR team have those tools at their fingertips. They can take that to their senior leadership team. They can develop and articulate a strategy, and they can measure that, and we can start to affect some real change. So, if I look at what we're doing with Kudos, and it's about deepening relationships with their customers and affecting change and pay gap disparity, and then remotely is bringing people together and hopefully a positive impact on the environment, then I like the direction we're heading. It's good.
Yep, no, totally, and I think, like you say, it's the right thing to do. It also ties back to that remote workforce conversation we had. Is it helps model what you should be paying fairly across a distributed workforce, not just because they happen to be in Auckland. Everyone who's doing the same job should be treated equally. Sorry, I forgot to put my phone on silent before we started. So, Adam, just as we wrap up, what's the best way for people to get in touch with either yourself or either of the companies if they want to find out more, either remotely or Kudos Web if they want to find out more?
Well, they're more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. That would be a great first start, and or they can email me at adam@remotelyhq.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to start any conversations, whether it's introduction of AI to your marketing team, the introduction of a pay GapSquare solution, or how remotely can help your team work better and happier in this current environment.
Yeah, it's
right on cue.
Yeah, that's ominous. That's just my text message tone, and it's ominous. Like I say, I should be turning this on mute. I'm turning my phone on mute while on calls like this. But hey, technology, we don't get it perfect right first time.
We get interrupted all the time.
Absolutely, and this is just more proof of, and now my camera's gone on the blink as well. This is just more proof of the value of something like remotely, as where you've got a single channel that everything's coming into.
You bet.
Hey Adam, look, it's been fantastic chatting with you. I know there's been a few people dropping in and out watching this as we go, but those details that you've got there, I'll share them in the comments with this. And hey, look, really good catching up, and look forward to talking again soon.
Thanks, Anthony. Really appreciate the opportunity, and stay safe and well, mate. Thanks.
You
Thanks
too,
again.
mate. You
All
too.
right. Take care.